Welcome to Austin Stories. Today's malicious compliance, OP's corrupt boss always writes him up for stupid reasons, so he does his job and tries to get his boss fired. Then OP just does what he's supposed to do, and the company's incompetence will tear it all apart. You can also find stories on the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider or link in the description. Here we go. The customer is always right, posted by Hyperquisitist. About 9 years ago, I worked at a food service job within a retail store. This job was absolutely horrible, as I got written up for anything and everything that I did. If I took my breaks, write up. If I didn't take any breaks, write up. I got called out once with a doctor's note saying that I absolutely could not work as my illness was highly contagious. Write up. This was my first time ever calling out, and I gave 48 hours notice. The second and last time was for my grandma's funeral, which I had requested off and was denied. I was written up then too. Any excuse my supervisor could find to write me up, he did. Being in high school at this time, I took this very personally and assumed that I had done something wrong. I worked there for 2 years, taking each write-up as a learning opportunity. However, I finally reached a point where I recognized that it wasn't my fault, and the malicious compliance began. In this job, there were add-ons, and these add-ons came with an upcharge. I had customers complain to me constantly about not wanting to be charged extra, but normally they would just pay it and move on. One customer, however, refused to pay for the add-on, but wanted it anyway. I pointed to the sign which said that it would cost extra and tried my best to politely explain to her that I can't give it to her without charging her. She demanded to speak to my manager. I happily called my manager over, as at that time the leader was also my area supervisor. Now each day there was an overall leader which would cycle, but each department had their own supervisor as well. I'll call him Bob. Bob was employed through the retail store specifically. Regardless, I thought that surely Bob would have my back, as he knows the most about the rules that I had to follow. I was very, very wrong. After listening to the customer, Bob proceeded to yell at me in front of her, stating, "The customer is always right, and you are not paid to argue with her. Give her what she wants and do not charge her for any of it." He also informed her that I would be written up for this, and I was. From that moment on, whenever a customer complained about having to pay for an add-on, I didn't charge them for it. If they demanded their items for free, saying they didn't like them or had a bad experience in the past, I gave it to them for free. After all, the customer says that they shouldn't have to pay for it, so who was I to argue? Of course, he meant that I shouldn't argue to the point of the manager being called, but he didn't specify, and I didn't want to be written up for it again, nor did I care to follow a do as I mean, not as I say policy anymore. It didn't take long for the people who worked in the actual retail store to learn that they could also get add-ons for free if they complained about it, as at the time that they were ordering, they were technically customers. Since each add-on cost between 60 cents and $1, and most customers wanted more than one add-on, the company was losing an average of $2 to $3 per transaction on the add-ons alone, not even considering the customers who got their entire order for free. Now, of course, $2 to $3 doesn't seem like much, but it was enough to catch the attention of my district supervisor, who I'll call Ann. Ann was employed by the food service company, and her job was to oversee the branches that were inside retail stores. Ann was very nice and respected the employees who worked with her company, regardless of if they weren't employed directly by her company, as was my case. She first asked Bob about why our location appeared to be less profitable than other locations, and less profitable than it had been a few months previously. He tried to pin it on me, saying that I was stealing from the company by giving my friends and coworkers free items. And, understanding of how serious of an accusation that was, insisted on speaking with me alone. I expected to be fired, but she instead asked me why profits had gone down. I explained to her what Bob had told me about the customer always being right and how I had gotten written up and didn't want to be written up again. So I followed his instructions word for word. For the first time since starting this job, someone took my side. She agreed that not charging for those add-ons would explain the loss that she was seeing, and that how Bob handled the situation was unprofessional and entirely against policy. Having Bob accuse me of stealing to protect himself was my last straw, and I put in my 2 weeks notice that same day. HR had apparently taken notice to how Bob was treating me, as her exact words were, "It's about time. I'm glad you're finally standing up for yourself." With my consent, she altered some of the dates to make my end date be a week earlier than it should have been, since the schedule had not been written yet. And to this day, I think of her as my guardian angel. Shortly after my last shift, I was informed by my friends that Bob no longer worked there as well. Anne was so upset with him that she called his supervisor and launched an investigation into his behavior. As it turns out, I was not the only one that he would write up without a legitimate reason. They were also incredibly upset that he directly caused an unnecessary loss in profits. He couldn't blame me for it, as it was his words, and many people corroborated that he had said the same to them at one point or another. I was just the first to maliciously comply with his request, thus bringing his behavior to the attention of someone in a higher position than him. He was fired, effective immediately. Again, it's another malicious compliance that goes pro and nuclear, because you just walk in, the employee is like, okay, follow the rules, do a little bit of twisty twist here. Oh, that's malicious compliance. Turns out the Bob here was fixing some things up, and it wasn't only OP, it was all these other employees that he was falsely writing up as well. An investigation gets launched into his employment and actions, and he gets axed. And the company loses OP. Like, that I did not expect to have all that come out, and it did. It's wild. What do you think? Was OP right, or was Bob? Corporate wants us to stop doing our job in order to save time, posted by Alinon. I used to work for this company a few years ago. I was part of a team of around 20 people, working on checking tickets to see if they were correctly formed and sent to the right department. If everything was correct, we'd close the ticket with yes and make an appointment with the right department to do a physical visit in order to fix the problem. If something was wrong, however, our role was to guide the person so that they wouldn't make the same mistakes again. We'd close the ticket with no, a short explanation on why it's no and how to fix it. After that, we'd have to send an email to the person themselves and CC every team manager of their location. We had 4 different locations with 3 to 7 team managers each. This email would have to consist of exactly where they went wrong for every single small mistake they made. It had to have a link where it was clear that it wasn't allowed or wrong, and what the right move in this case would be. It also had to be friendly rather than accusing. Making this email was one of the longer parts of our job, and for small mistakes, it would take 5 minutes, but for longer mistakes, it would take 15 minutes. If the person didn't include any information about themselves, we'd have to search it ourselves, adding another 5 minutes. After doing all of that, we had to report it in an Excel sheet so they could keep track of how many yes and how many no and for what reason. Corporate really pushed the "you are a guide, a trainer, a friendly person to show them how to do it" thing. They didn't want us to be a cop or the bad guy so that everyone hated us for saying no. I gave trainings on how to correctly fill in ticket forms and what to check before thinking about a ticket. Corporate also wanted us to do the job faster. They made basic templates for our mails that included the most common mistakes, so the only thing that we needed to do was to fill in the personal information and to slightly adjust it for the mistake. That wasn't fast enough for corporate though, so they made us add a disclaimer to our mails to not contact us but to contact their team manager if they didn't agree. No more DMs asking for help, because that means we weren't doing our job. It still wasn't fast enough. Corporate didn't like that our ticket queue had tickets that were older than 3 days, and if it reached an age older than 3 days, we had to directly send it to the next department rather than checking it. We'd close it with maybe to say that we didn't check it. It rarely happened that tickets were older than 3 days, because usually we picked them up the same day or the day after. Only after the weekend it would be longer, because, well, we didn't work on the weekend, so we had a backlog on Monday. It made us the fastest queue to put a ticket in, the other queues taking a week or 2 weeks before it's picked up. Corporate kept removing tasks till we had nothing remaining, all in the name of speed. We had to allow everything, but weren't allowed to tell everyone, so they would put effort in their tickets. We told corporate it was bad for 3 reasons. First of all, people weren't stupid. People would know and test their limits to see what they could get away with. Second, it would cause an overflow of appointments to our people going to visit houses to fix issue. Think like 1,500 appointments a day for 30 to 50 people. Third, it wouldn't speed anything up. Instead, we expect to become busier than ever because people would call and say it takes too long or their issue wasn't fixed. The people that went to the houses would have to call to say that it's for another department or say it wasn't what was said. 2, they need to reschedule to prepare. This would be an issue for every department because trashy tickets would be sent everywhere in the hope that someone would pick it up faster. Corporate said they've thought about it for a long time and it would be fine. They also did this for the department that handles requests for money. So we allowed, well, everything. Requests that weren't for someone to visit, have a person visit you anyway. You already have an appointment, have another one. They can have a tea party together. Anything goes, and the money department allowed thousands of euros to be given away. People would send requests for multiple smaller amounts to not stand out. Of course, this meant that exactly what we thought would happen, happened. People tested their limits, and we ended up with tickets that had 0 information. I have an issue, please send someone. The tickets were trash, and they were trash for every department. People started sending in more and more tickets, the same issue to every department, so every department had a huge backlog of trashy tickets. And the appointments? You were lucky if you'd get anyone in a month. This was at the start of COVID, so people called in sick. This didn't help the fact that everyone worked from home and we had more issues in general with that. The call queues went to 20 to 50 people to 500 people waiting. Everyone was overworked. Besides us, of course, our queue was empty. We had to fight for tickets to get our tickets per hour. We had fun chatting and listening to music. Corporate didn't allow anyone to contact us, so we had no consequences of what we did. Corporate came with some excuse that we had good months and lots of new people joined us, so the backlog was to set up everything for us. Not for existing issues, of course. Why would that be a problem? It all went so terrible, and corporate stuck their head in the sand during it. They didn't listen to complaints or our advice to fix it. By the time they finally undid the change, it was too late. The damage was done. They changed it because it helped. Our queue was empty, so they got what they wanted. Not because everything went terrible, of course. Now, because all the tickets were trash, we rejected everything. It took a lot longer because we had to write emails explaining all the issues they had, linking to everything that said how to fix it. And we had to figure out who we were dealing with because no one left their information on it anymore. So it took around an hour total for a single ticket. You can guess that meant we also got a backlog. We received more tickets in general because people were like, I'll just ask for someone to visit. That saves me having to do anything. So suddenly, it took multiple days for us to fix things, and that meant we got overworked as well. People slowly realized they had to put in effort for tickets again, but they forgot how to. We told them to go to their team managers for a refresher, of course. This would take them away from their job in order to train them again. People started quitting because of stress. I shortly left as well. I recently heard that it didn't get any better. The backlog is still there and everything but the backlog is on pause. Projects to train people into the role or to get a higher role were paused, so no one joined. That's what happens when you don't listen to the people who know what they're doing. The company lost a lot of money and time because besides giving away money, they had to pay for the people to visit houses since it was an external company. I just don't get, like, they could see these metrics falling, right? The company was like, oh, things were better before. Why are we losing money? Why are people quitting? Why are things going wrong? Oh, something's got to be happening here. We've made a huge change recently. Could that be the catalyst? Nah, we're always right. It's never our fault. The people that are actually working in the day-to-day on the ground level, they don't know what they're doing. They are just wanting to get off free. They're freeloading. They just blah, blah, blah. You get the point, right? Because they just were not communicating, not understanding, not listening to the people in their day-to-day. This is what happens, and it looks like they still haven't learned from it. OP, good move on getting out of there because it looks like it's going to heck in a handbasket, going down fast. Nice job. Fire me for BS? I'll take the company down with me. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this awesome justice, and I'll see you there.